Welcome, and thank you for joining me tonight for another long journey into the quieter corners of history. This is a place where the past unfolds slowly, gently, and without rush. A place where you can set aside the noise of the present and drift through the world as it once was, at the pace of daily life long forgotten. Tonight's story will carry you into the ancient world of Rome, not into its battles or its emperors, at least not yet, but into the slower, stranger details of what it was like simply to live there. The sights, the sounds, the daily routines that defined life in the great empire. Our path will unfold in 4 stages. First, we will step quietly into the steamy chambers of the Roman bathhouse to see why life inside was far from the glamorous images we often imagine. From there, we will turn our gaze to the rise and fall of Emperor Nero, a man whose ambition and indulgence carried him to dazzling heights and, ultimately, to his ruin. Later, we will linger among the ruins of Pompeii, listening to the silent echoes of a city caught in its final hours. And at last, we will end the evening at the tables of the Roman elite, where banquets stretched on for hours, and the contrast between luxury and survival was more striking than you might think. Take a breath now, and imagine yourself standing at the edge of ancient Rome, the cobbled streets under your feet, the murmur of voices carried on the air, the distant clatter of carts, and just ahead, the doors of the bathhouse open. Step forward and picture the heavy wooden doors swinging shut behind you. You are inside the Roman bathhouse now. The air presses close, thick and warm. It smells faintly of damp stone, old oils, and sweat that never quite washes away. The first sound you notice is not silence, but chatter. Dozens, sometimes hundreds of voices echo through the hall. The sound bounces off the tiled walls in a kind of constant murmur, never truly quiet, never fully calm. The bathhouse, or thermae, was the center of Roman social life. It was not just for bathing. It was where people met to discuss business, where gossip drifted from corner to corner, and where men of every class came to rub shoulders with one another. But for you, arriving for the first time, the experience would feel less like luxury and more like endurance. The journey through the baths followed a sequence, each room more intense than the last. First, the apoditerium, the changing room. It is crowded here, full of bodies pressing past one another. Slaves hover near their masters holding towels, oils, and scraping tools. You, however, have no slave. You must leave your belongings on a shelf or in a niche in the wall, unguarded, and hope they will be there when you return. Theft was common, and many first-time visitors lost whatever they brought. From here, you step into the tepidarium, the warm room. The heat is gentle at first, but the air hangs heavy with humidity. The floor beneath you is warm as well, for it is heated from below by the hypocaust system, where fires burn constantly in chambers beneath the stone. The warmth seeps into your skin, and at first it feels pleasant, almost like a cocoon. But as you remain, you notice the stillness of the air, the faint tang of smoke and the closeness of so many bodies. Next comes the caldarium, the hot room. Here the heat is oppressive. Steam rises from pools of scalding water, and the air itself feels difficult to breathe. Your skin prickles, and droplets of sweat run down your arms, mixing with the oils and dirt that have already begun to loosen. The Romans believed that sweating out impurities was essential, but for many, this room was overwhelming. If you are not used to it, you may feel lightheaded, or as though the air itself presses down upon your chest. The final step in the ritual is sudden and sharp. You plunge into the frigidarium, the cold pool. The water bites against your skin, a shock after the heavy heat of the caldarium. It is meant to invigorate, to close the pores and refresh the body. But for you, unprepared, it feels like punishment more than relief. And yet, this cycle is repeated again and again by the seasoned bathgoers. Heat, sweat, scrape, plunge. The rhythm of the bathhouse is both routine and exhausting. Between these stages, there are rituals of scraping the skin with a curved tool called a strigil, rubbing in perfumed oils, and sometimes even allowing slaves to pluck stray hairs from the body. The process was not one of privacy or comfort. You are never alone. Everywhere you turn, someone else is standing close, laughing, gossiping, or eyeing you with curiosity. The water itself is not always clean. There are no filters, no chemicals to sterilize. The pools are clouded with the residue of countless bodies, a mixture of oils, sweat, and dust from the streets outside. Skin diseases were common, and infections spread easily here. And yet, the bathhouse was so essential to Roman life that few questioned its risks. Imagine yourself lingering in the tepidarium again, your back against the warm stone, trying to rest as the voices echo around you. The heat lulls you into stillness, but it is never fully relaxing. The rhythm of the bathhouse is constant motion, from one chamber to the next, from sweat to cold to sweat again. For you, this would not feel like leisure. It would feel like survival, a test of endurance against heat, humidity, and exposure. Why you wouldn't last a day in a Roman bathhouse becomes clearer with each breath you take inside it. Still, to the Romans, this was daily life. This was ordinary. And for them, perhaps it was comfort of a kind. Step back now from the steam of the bathhouse. The murmur of voices fades, the echo of water dripping on stone grows quiet. We leave behind the crowded chamber and walk outward into the broader world of Rome, a city at its height of power, but also at the edge of excess. Here we turn our attention to one man, Emperor Nero. Nero's story is not one of peace and comfort, but of contrasts. Youth and decadence, art and cruelty, adoration and downfall. It is a story that reveals the strange fragility of power, even in a world that seemed unshakable. Nero was not born to be emperor. He was born Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus in the year 37, in a family already tangled with the Julio-Claudian dynasty. Through his mother, Agrippina the Younger, he was tied to Caligula, to Claudius, and to Augustus himself. Ambition ran in his blood, but destiny was not yet assured. When Nero was still a boy, his mother married the Emperor Claudius. Claudius adopted Nero, and with that single act, a new heir to the throne was created. The young boy, once only a noble among many, was now positioned to inherit the empire. Imagine yourself in Rome at this time. The city is vast and busy, its streets filled with marble statues and temples, its markets thick with goods from every corner of the Mediterranean. In the palaces at its heart, the young Nero is being educated. He learns Greek philosophy, he studies poetry and music, and he becomes entranced not with the duties of rule, but with the arts. By the age of 16, Nero was emperor. Claudius had died suddenly. Some said poisoned, though no proof was ever clear. Agrippina, powerful and calculating, guided her teenage son onto the throne. The empire belonged to him, but in truth, it was his mother's hand that moved many of the decisions in those early years. At first, Nero was welcomed. He reduced harsh taxes, he granted certain freedoms, and he presented himself as a patron of the people. He walked among the crowds, he attended games, and he sought the favor of ordinary citizens, something many emperors before him had neglected. In these first years, Rome seemed hopeful. The Senate, long at odds with previous rulers, found Nero surprisingly agreeable. The common people saw him as generous. Even the provinces of the empire, stretching from Spain to Syria, felt the promise of stability. But beneath the calm surface, cracks were forming. Nero's ambitions leaned not toward governance, but toward performance. He longed to be a singer, a poet, an actor upon the stage. For a Roman emperor, these were not dignified pursuits, but Nero cared little for dignity. Over time, his mother's influence waned. Agrippina, who had once been his protector, became a burden in his eyes. Their relationship turned from closeness to hostility, and soon Nero sought to free himself from her control. It is said that Agrippina was killed on Nero's orders. A shocking act, for in Roman culture the bond between mother and son was sacred. And yet, with her gone, Nero no longer had restraint. His reign shifted. He poured money into lavish building projects, extravagant games, and endless performances in which he himself took the stage. He sang, he acted, he recited poetry. Audiences were compelled to sit in silence for hours, for no one could leave the theater while the emperor performed. Some found it entertaining. Many found it unbearable. In the year 64, disaster struck. A great fire swept through Rome, consuming large portions of the city. The flames raged for days, and when at last they were quenched, vast neighborhoods lay in ruin. Whispers began that Nero himself had ordered the fire, or at least that he had welcomed it, to clear space for his new palace complex. The palace, known as the Domus Aurea, or the Golden House, was the most opulent Rome had ever seen. Its walls glittered with gold leaf, its gardens spread across vast acres, and within its halls, Nero walked as though he were a god. Whether or not Nero was responsible for the fire, public opinion shifted against him. The people who had once cheered his name now muttered in the streets. The Senate, once cooperative, grew restless. As the years passed, rebellions stirred in the provinces. Generals began to declare independence, challenging Nero's rule. The treasury, strained by his extravagance, was nearly empty, and his grip on power loosened. By the year 68, it was clear. Nero's reign was ending. The Senate declared him a public enemy. The guards who once protected him abandoned him, and Nero, left with only a few loyal companions, fled the city he once ruled. He hid for a time, but he could not escape the inevitable. Faced with capture and humiliation, Nero chose to end his life. It is said that his final words were, "What an artist dies in me." With those words, the Julio-Claudian dynasty ended. Rome entered a period of chaos, a year of civil war known as the Year of the Four Emperors. But Nero himself, the boy emperor, the performer, the dreamer, lived on in memory. Some even claimed he had not died at all, and rumors of his return persisted for years. So now, as the echoes of Nero's voice fade, we leave behind the palaces and theaters of his reign. From here, we step quietly to another place, a city frozen in its final hours, a place where time itself stopped. Our next path will take us to Pompeii, to walk among its streets and listen for the silent stories that the ash preserved. Imagine now that we are leaving the crowded streets of Rome. The air grows lighter and the noise of the city fades away. We travel southward toward the Bay of Naples. Here lies the city of Pompeii, once alive with markets, villas, and voices, and now silent. A place preserved not by intention, but by catastrophe. Before its end, Pompeii was a prosperous town. Its streets were paved with stone, its walls painted with bright murals, its people busy with trade and daily tasks. Walk with me along one of its main roads. The stones beneath your feet are deeply grooved, carved by the wheels of countless carts. On either side, shop fronts spill open. You can almost hear the calls of vendors, the smell of fresh bread rising from ovens, the tang of wine poured from amphorae. The houses here are surprisingly spacious, with courtyards open to the sky. Many are decorated with mosaics and frescoes, images of gods, of nature, of daily scenes. Even in modest homes, art was a part of life. Pompeii was not a quiet village. It was lively, bustling, a place of theater, baths, taverns, and gardens. And yet, on the horizon stood Mount Vesuvius. Green, peaceful, seemingly harmless. The people did not know it was a volcano. In the year 79, everything changed. The eruption of Vesuvius was sudden, and it unfolded in phases. First came the plume of ash and pumice, rising high into the sky, turning day to twilight. Stones and ash began to fall, covering the city, weighing down rooftops, forcing people to shelter or flee. Hours passed. Some attempted escape, their footprints later found in hardened ash. Others remained, perhaps believing the danger would pass. Then came the pyroclastic surges, clouds of superheated gas and debris rushing down the slopes with unstoppable force. These flows overtook the city, and in a moment, life ended. The bodies of those caught within were sealed where they fell. The city disappeared beneath meters of volcanic material. For centuries, it lay forgotten. A memory erased from maps, its story whispered only in passing by ancient writers. It was not until the 18th century that Pompeii began to re-emerge. Excavations revealed streets, houses, and objects still lying where their owners had left them. Archaeologists found cooking pots still resting on stoves, loaves of bread left in ovens, paintings bright with color, as though no time had passed at all. Even graffiti remained on the walls, messages scratched by ordinary people, complaints, jokes, and declarations of love. But perhaps the most haunting discoveries were the human forms. Over time, the ash around the bodies hardened, while the bodies themselves decayed, leaving hollow spaces in the ground. Archaeologists poured plaster into these voids, and what emerged were shapes of people in their final moments. A mother curled around her child, a man shielding his face, a dog still straining against its chain. They are not gory images, but they carry a quiet weight. Not statues, but imprints of real lives, suddenly interrupted. And yet, even with centuries of study, many mysteries remain. How much warning did the people truly have? Some evidence suggests that tremors had shaken the region days, even weeks, before the eruption. But did they understand what those tremors meant? Or did daily life seem too important to abandon? Another question lingers over the timeline. For many years, historians believed the eruption occurred in August. But new evidence, such as ripe autumn fruits found preserved, suggests it may have been in October. Even in something so catastrophic, the exact date is uncertain. And what of those who escaped? Not everyone in Pompeii perished. Some fled to neighboring towns, their fates harder to trace. Did they rebuild lives elsewhere, or carry with them a memory too heavy to speak of? The ash preserved objects, but it could not preserve every story. Much of Pompeii remains unexcavated, still lying beneath the earth, holding secrets we may never know. If you walk through Pompeii today, the city feels strangely alive. Shadows fall across streets still lined with stones. Fountains and courtyards stand where they always have. The outlines of homes remain, quiet and waiting. And yet, there are no voices. The silence is heavy. It is not the silence of a city asleep, but of a city paused in time. The tragedy of Pompeii is not told through spectacle, but through stillness. Through the everyday items left behind. Through the suddenness with which life stopped. So we leave Pompeii, with its mysteries unsolved, its final hours preserved in stone and ash. From the streets of a buried city, we now move upward again, into the candlelit halls of Rome's elite. There, life was lived in feasts and indulgence, a sharp contrast to the survival of common life. Our next and final step will be to sit at the tables of the Roman elite, and to see what it was like to feast in luxury while others struggled outside. Step away now from the stillness of Pompeii's empty streets. The ash falls away, and the silence dissolves into softer sounds. You find yourself once more in the heart of Rome. This time, not in its public baths, nor in its theaters, but in the grand villa of an elite Roman family, where a banquet is about to begin. The villa itself is vast, built around open courtyards, its walls adorned with colorful frescoes. Torches flicker along the plastered walls, their glow reflecting in polished marble floors. The air is filled with mingled scents, cooked meats spiced with herbs, freshly baked bread, sweet honeyed wine, and the faint fragrance of incense burning at the household altar. Guests are not seated in chairs but recline on couches arranged around low tables. This posture, leaning on one elbow, stretching the body in repose, marks the difference between dining and feasting. It is not about nourishment alone, but about display, about elegance. As you enter, you are offered a basin to wash your hands. A servant drapes a light cloth across your couch. You settle into the rhythm of the evening. The banquet unfolds slowly, course after course, each arriving with ceremony. At first, the gustaccio, the appetizer. Dishes of olives, eggs, and salads flavored with vinegar and herbs. Bowls of fish sauce called garum, a staple of Roman taste, sharp and pungent to the nose, but prized by those who have grown used to it. Then the prima mensa, the main course. Platters arrive with roasted meats, pork, game birds, sometimes even exotic animals. The wealthy delight in variety, and the rarer the dish, the greater the prestige of the host. Perhaps a peacock, its feathers displayed for decoration, though its meat is tough. Perhaps a dormouse, fattened with nuts and roasted whole. Vegetables too, but prepared with care. Asparagus in season, beans stewed with herbs, cabbage simmered with vinegar. What seems ordinary to us was considered refined when arranged artfully. Wine flows throughout, always mixed with water, sometimes sweetened with honey, sometimes flavored with spices. Never consumed neat. To drink it pure would be considered barbaric. Finally, the secunda mensa, dessert. Fruits drizzled with honey, cakes made with flour and cheese, nuts roasted and salted. A gentle ending to the indulgence. But the food is not the whole purpose. At a Roman banquet, conversation is the true centerpiece. Philosophers debate matters of the mind. Poets recite verses. Musicians play softly on lyres or flutes. And at times, dancers perform, their movements lit by the glow of oil lamps. Politics, gossip, business deals, all mingle together. For the elite, banquets are not simply indulgence. They are where power is strengthened, alliances formed, and reputations secured. Yet, for the guest reclining quietly, it can feel endless. The meal stretches for hours, sometimes late into the night. The rhythm of courses and conversation continues, unhurried like the tide of the sea. Around the edges of the room, servants move constantly. They refill cups, replace dishes, and tend to the comfort of their masters. For them, the banquet is not leisure, but labor. The contrast is sharp. On one side, guests recline in ease, speaking of art, politics, and taste. On the other, servants slip quietly between shadows, unseen unless needed. This rhythm, luxury and labor, pleasure and service, defines the Roman elite. Their comfort was built upon the effort of others. As the banquet draws to a close, lamps burn low. The air grows heavy with the sense of food and smoke. Some guests drift into sleep where they recline. Others continue quiet conversations, their voices soft and slow. When you rise to leave, your body feels heavy, your mind lulled by wine and endless words. Outside, the Roman night is still. The stars hang quietly above the tiled rooftops. The city seems at rest. So ends the banquet, as our journey through Rome draws to its end as well. From the crowded heat of the bathhouse, to the glittering but fragile reign of Nero, to the silent mystery of Pompeii, and finally to the long feasts of the elite, you have walked the many sides of Roman life. In a moment, we will close this journey gently, reflecting on what remains of Rome, and the calm it leaves us with today. You have traveled far tonight. You have felt the press of heat and steam inside the crowded Roman bathhouse, where you scrubbed, soaked, and emerged clean, but weary. You have followed the rise and fall of Nero, a ruler whose brilliance and madness echo still across centuries. You have walked the silent, ash-covered streets of Pompeii, where the stillness of time reminds us how fragile daily life can be. And you have reclined among the wealthy at their long banquets, where laughter, gossip, and indulgence filled the hours until nightfall. Rome, in all its power, was never simple. It was sweat and toil, decay and splendor, lavish feasts and empty hunger. It was emperors who ruled with fire and ordinary men and women who struggled to live each day. And yet, despite the centuries between then and now, you can still feel Rome. In the stones of its ruins, in the arches of its aqueducts, in the faint echo of sandals on marble floors. Now, as the last torches gutter out and the streets of the ancient city grow quiet, you too can rest. The voices of philosophers and emperors fade. The laughter of banquets fades. The crackle of Vesuvius fades. The footsteps in the bathhouse fade. All that remains is the calm of silence and the slow rhythm of your own breathing. So close your eyes and let Rome drift away, like a dream that dissolves at dawn. The city sleeps now, its stones cool beneath the stars. And you, too, may let sleep take you, carrying you far beyond the empire of the past into the quiet empire of rest.